Kyo wa mou neouze? If you translate that, it turns into let's go to sleep for today. That is the famous line from Persona 5's Morgana. I think he said those words as many times as there are waves in the ocean. There are lots of waves in the ocean. He can also say things that derive from that. Aren't you tired? Let's call it a day and get some sleep. No, Morgana. I don't want to go to sleep, even though I'm tired. Why are you telling me to sleep? I thought Persona 5 was all about standing up to societal corruption, and you're telling me to conform to this idea of replenishing my energy and getting an adequate amount of rest is the best thing I can do after nearly dying 8 times in mementos? No, I will not stand by this idealistic corrupted view of getting rest when I clearly want to do more activities out of my own free will, Morgana. Anyways, we're going to talk about the current mascot of the Nero channel right here, Morgana. He's widely disliked by the Persona community, so we're going to uncover that. Also, I'll make my points on why I think he doesn't really deserve that hate. Introducing Persona 5's official mascot, Morgana. Morgana is one of the founding members of the Phantom Thieves, maybe the actual founder of the Phantom Thieves. Look, we don't need to go over his whole introduction of his character and an analysis. Morgana is the most annoying Persona character, according to a lot of people. Like when I mentioned in the beginning before, Morgana is always restricting the gameplay. Oftentimes, when you've done a certain activity during the day and then you want to go outside again in the evening, Morgana would say that you would rather sleep and take some rest than hearing Takemi's voice lines over and over again.
Like, look at how she's sitting, bro. Take me on some real. Let's go inside the little x-ray machine. Let me stick it all the way inside you. Let it snap a picture so we can see your skeletal frame with my inside your rib cage on some real. Please.
100% of the time that did happen was when you entered the palace or the mementos. After that, you could not go outside again at night. You entered, doesn't matter what you did in the palace or the mementos, you could just sneeze inside and scroll through Instagram reels for an hour. You're effectively done for the day. He says you're tired and you should go to sleep. You can't do anything about it. Also, Morgana blocks you from doing activities before a big event is coming up, like a boss fight, even though there are no visible reasons to block you from doing activities. I'm sure a lot of you know and experience this when you keep hearing Morgana that you're tired or let's just sleep for today. It can get annoying to a certain point. A big reason why we love Persona is because we get to explore the world inside it through confidence or social links. In fact, the biggest factor on why the Persona games are popular are because of that confident or social link system. And Morgana always blocking or not allowing us to do activities in the evening or even sometimes after school is pretty frustrating. Persona's progression is based on a calendar system. You progress the game by advancing to the next day. You can only do 1 to 3 activities in a day, so you have to make things worthwhile on that day because you only have about a year to do all the things that you want. Also, some confidence in the game require your social stat to be at a high level, and raising your social stats level takes quite a while. It can even take you until the end of the game to max your social stats. So when Morgana blocks you from doing activities on the day where it's limited to how many times you can do in a day, it's understandable that people will get annoyed by him. This type of mechanic has always been in the Persona games since Persona 3. You can only do one activity at one time in a day. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but that's just how the games work since Persona 3. In Persona 3, you can go to Tartarus at night. Most of the gameplay takes place at night anyways, and after you're done exploring the Tartarus, you immediately advance to the next day. I think there are certain times where you're not allowed to do some activities because of the story purposes, but it's not similar to Persona 5 where you go to do some dungeon exploring and then you can't do anything afterwards. Same case with Persona 4. In fact, the system in Persona 5 doesn't even make sense when compared to Persona 4. Persona 4, you go to the TV world during the day, and after you're finished exploring, you come back to the evening, just like in Persona 5. But in Persona 4, even though you've explored the TV world beforehand, you can still explore and do activities in the evening. Nanako doesn't go up to you and say that you're tired and you can't go out in the evening. Dojima, well, no matter what activity you did during the day, if he's at the house at the evening, you can't go out regardless. But with Persona 5, I don't know why they decided to add that blockage into the game. Persona 5 has the most amount of interactable confidence among all the Persona games. Why is it now that it is limited by the game itself. It's a weird and, I think, such a stupid game design decision to be limited on how many activities you can do in a day, when you can only do 1 to 3 things in a day. It's not a lot. If it's for story purposes, that's fine. When I just want to advance Chihai's confidence and I can't do that because I was trying to save Japan from societal corruption, it's very limiting and it gives the player less freedom. I'm not even talking about Morgana in that, because it's literally the game design's fault and it just happened to make Morgana into the scapegoat. I guess the only way to justify this is that players will be aligned with the story progression because they are being held back, not advancing the game too fast, and they are playing in a sort of realistic way in the world of Persona. It adds immersion, I guess. So this point of Morgana constantly blocking you from activities is just Atlus's way of making Morgana into the scapegoat because of terrible game design, and that is, Morgana is basically narrating the whole story and gameplay, so he ended up getting the flack. I know that it's weird to point it directly at Atlus, but the reason why Morgana is hated is because of Atlus. I don't know, maybe instead of hating on the character, maybe think of the decisions that were made by the developer that created the character. I think this point of hating Morgana, to me, is not really justified. It's kind of weird. I've always thought it was just a terrible game design decision from Atlus since the beginning. When you progress the story during the Okumura Arc, Morgana went off on his own and eventually teamed up with Haru to form the Thieves of Beauty or something like that. It was because Morgana and Ryuji had beef and Morgana's concerns weren't really being taken seriously as Ryuji was constantly shitting on him. It was something along the lines of that. He abandons the group and goes rogue essentially because he got his feelings hurt. Now, I do understand why a lot of people find this annoying or they got mad at Morgana for this act. It is childish and pretty annoying coming from Morgana, who is already someone that a lot of people found annoying in the first place. A lot of people felt that this move by Morgana created a subplot that was very unnecessary as it creates unwanted drama and sort of disrupts the story pacing. His decision to leave the group was very abrupt, and it obviously disadvantaged the Phantom Thieves in a lot of ways because Morgana was a member, and I think we all know that every member in the Phantom Thieves is very important. Not only did he put the Phantom Thieves in a tough spot when tackling Okumura's palace, his actions also kind of overshadowed Haru's introduction and her overall arc. We get to see glimpses of Haru during the start and the middle of the story, so we don't really know or care much about Haru until that arc where we're supposed to care a lot for her character. Compared to Makoto, Yusuke, and Futaba, for example, their arcs were mostly focusing on them. Their introduction, their importance, and their character development was all focusing on them and only them. Haru's introduction was pretty underwhelming. We didn't get to see her awakening because she already achieved that off screen with Morgana. Morgana was basically taking the spotlight from Haru when it was supposed to be her introduction. It's weird because Morgana's character development was taking place when Haru was supposed to be the star of the show during the Okumura arc. And since Morgana took the spotlight, Haru didn't really have much presence and her character felt like it wasn't fleshed out enough. It does not feel like she had much character development through the main story because what was supposed to be her arc. It diverts a lot of the attention towards Morgana. This kind of resulted in Haru not being the main focus on the arc, and it felt like Haru was just a secondary character. While Haru and Morgana share moments that highlight their mutual struggles with identity and purpose, these interactions don't fully flesh out Haru's character. Instead, they serve to advance Morgana's storyline. Haru's backstory, her strained relationship with her father, her role in his company, and her arranged marriage actually had potential for emotional storytelling like what we've seen with Mitsuru in Persona 3. However, it was underexplored as the game focuses on Morgana's conflict over her development. Haru's debut as the beauty thief didn't feel like it was something serious, which really undermines the severity of her struggles. This tonal inconsistency makes it harder for players, like me for example, to connect with her as a character. However, I don't have too many problems with Haru, nor do I dislike her. As you all know, I like simple and down-to-earth characters, which Haru is in Persona 5. She is an ordinary character you can call among the Persona 5 cast, which has its own charm. It is understandable that a lot of people dislike Morgana because of his antics, and Haru becomes overshadowed by the focus on Morgana's character development on wanting to be in a place where he belongs. However, Haru and Morgana's bonding moments establish a thematic link between their arcs. Both characters grapple with feeling out of place. Haru as a sheltered high school girl trying to assert her independence, and Morgana someone as a non-human searching for purpose. While Haru's introduction is overshadowed, players who pursue her confident route get to see her growth and resilience. So, in terms of the main story, we do not really miss out much on her character and her development because we get to see all of that through her confidant. But because of the focus on Morgana's antics and his development, the Okumura arc was one of the most, if not the most underwhelming arcs in Persona 5. So yes, for this point, his hate or dislikeness is justified. Morgana always had a condescending attitude towards Ryuji. Since their first meeting, Morgana was constantly shitting on Ryuji because of his brash and aggressive nature. Also, Ryuji is hot-headed and short-tempered. I guess he's just an angry individual? That's the first impression I got from Ryuji, but obviously with his character developing, eventually he became a more likable character. But Morgana always had this condescending attitude towards him that was present until later parts of the game as a part of their banter. So, how bad is it between Morgana and Ryuji? Earlier part of the game, notably the Kamoshida arc and the Madarame arc, the Phantom Thieves were still young and inexperienced in thieving throughout the metaverse. With that in mind, it is very likely that the members will have ideas, plans, or suggestions that would put them in imminent danger and are not well thought out. Ryuji, being the person that he is, always had straightforward, sometimes reckless ideas like rushing through infiltration and facing the enemies head-on, which is a stupid idea. Because of that, Morgana always calls out Ryuji for these ideas and mocks him for it, making it like he's just all muscle and no brains. To be fair, a lot of the times, Morgana is right, but Ryuji doesn't really hold any of that towards him. Morgana calling out or making snarky jabs towards Ryuji was a common occurrence throughout the game. I think at a certain point, Ryuji was completely fine with the constant comments from Morgana, as it became the go-to comedic moment of the story. However, what pissed people off was that during the Okumura arc, Ryuji said some things that were pretty insensitive to Morgana. Pretty insensitive is debatable, and what he said towards Morgana also can be debated whether that was in the same realm of the banter that they already had established at the start of the game. Morgana took the insult from Ryuji too personally, and it resulted in the whole thing that I explained before. People were pissed off at Morgana because he acted like a child and he was quote-unquote insecure. Also, Morgana constantly called Ryuji dumb. No one really cared, but when Ryuji called Morgana useless that one time, suddenly everyone locked their eyes on Ryuji. So a lot of it just boiled down to Ryuji getting flack all game, but the one time he fires back at Morgana, Morgana threw a childish tantrum which led to him stealing the spotlight away from Haru in the Okumura arc, where she was supposed to be the main star of the arc. Was this hate justified? Yes and no. To be honest, this is more of a sort of yes, and I'm more inclined to say no. The reason I said yes is because Morgana stealing the spotlight away from Haru. The whole Morgana character development should have been done in any time before or after an arc. It just doesn't make sense to have this childish conflict in an arc where it's clearly dealing with a much more serious problem. Why did Morgana decide to throw a childish tantrum during the Okumura arc? It will be explained later. But the writers failed to put the focus on Haru and the villain in the Okumura arc. And because of that, Haru doesn't get the fleshing out her character needed in the main story. It does not feel like Haru was getting the introduction and the spotlight she deserved, which led to her character being somewhat just there from then on. As for the reason I said no is because there were a lot of factors that led up to Morgana throwing a childish tantrum, and to be honest, him acting that way was understandable, some way. I think a lot of people failed to look deeper into Morgana just because of the character that he is. Similar to Teddy, just a mascot character. He's a cute cat, has a relatively annoying or cute voice, one of the less serious characters, and always had jokes at his disposal. I mean, the establishment of his character during the start of the game was as I described, and it was pretty much that throughout the whole game. A lot of people didn't take into account that, as all characters are, they are characters. They have feelings, struggles, insecurities, and moments of weakness. They can be irrational, stupid, or let their emotions get the best of them. It's just that with Morgana, it's very much in a unstructured manner. But all things like feelings, struggles, and all that, he very much has it. Morgana was originally the Phantom Thieves navigator and, in a sense, the second in command to Joker. He was a very important and a key figure of the Phantom Thieves early on, but when they took in characters like Makoto and Futaba, his importance was diminished. Makoto can somewhat direct the Phantom Thieves, making her a strategist of the team, and Futaba replaced Morgana as the navigator because of her persona abilities. Because of this, Morgana starts to lose his sense of belonging in the team. Throughout the game, he has been saying that he is a human because he wants to be the same as other people so he can belong in the same place as them. It's a whole identity crisis for him. As you progress the story, this bothered him more and more, especially when he had dreams of what he could be. The Okumura Arc probably became the breaking point for Morgana because there were many attempts of him opening up to Joker, but he didn't get the answer that he wanted and he kept it inside of himself. During this time, the Phantom Thieves, especially Ryuji, became really complacent because their popularity was high and they were successful in all of the missions. Ryuji even suggested at one point to reveal their identities to the world to take advantage of their popularity, which was a very stupid idea. The Phantom Thieves were too much in their heads and they failed to realize that Morgana was struggling internally. He was obviously in a bad headspace, so when Ryuji went too far with his comment, calling Morgana useless, which is one of the things that he was struggling with, it hit a sore spot for him, so he threw that childish tantrum and ran away on his own. It is understandable that he acted that way if you realize and paid attention to Morgana's development of his problem and how it was bothering him. Yes, it was just a relatively small jab at Morgana, and Morgana was constantly berating Ryuji. It was really nothing to get worked up for. But as all people go, there are just some things that hit harder for them even though it was nothing for you. Everyone in the world experienced this. You said something to your friend that you assumed was nothing, but it upsets him a lot. Morgana is a character like all of them. This was his moment of weakness. It just happened to be a childish tantrum. The right course of action after that is for both parties to apologize, reconcile, and tell what was bothering them in the first place. And that is what Morgana and Ryuji did. They reconciled, they made up, and I'm sure that their bond became stronger after that. They continue to jab at each other and it's all fine. So I don't really get why people hate Morgana for this, because the people at fault were both him and Ryuji, and they had already made up anyways. To an extent, the Phantom Thieves were also at fault for not realizing that Morgana was struggling with something. People are quick to pin the blame on Morgana because they all just boil it down to Ryuji firing back and Morgana throwing a childish tantrum, when it was more than that. The justified part was that Morgana stole the spotlight from Haru when it was supposed to be her arc. What Morgana did was understandable, but not right or rational. What Ryuji did was too far, but it was within the realm of the usual banter that they have, and he just lacks emotional intelligence overall. The Phantom Thieves were very complacent in that moment, and they were blind to the risk and problems that they're facing. So if all of them are at fault, you can't just single out Morgana. It's a collective failure of the Phantom Thieves, which led to further failures that they faced later on. So I don't hate Morgana, nor I think he is deserving of the blind hatred that he gets. He is undoubtedly a polarizing character, but the reasons behind the hate towards him often reflect the broader frustrations with the game's mechanics and the storytelling choices. While his constant prompts to rest are annoying, they stem more from Atlas's game design decisions than from Morgana himself. Similarly, his actions during the Okumura Arc and his dynamic with Ryuji are products of deeper character insecurities and interpersonal conflicts that a lot of people fail to see and realize. These elements of his character make Morgana more than just an annoying mascot. They make him relatable, flawed, and human in his own way. While his shortcomings may frustrate players, a lot of people fail to look deeper into him, as Morgana has layers of depth worth exploring and understanding. By looking past his perceived annoyances, we can better appreciate Morgana's contribution to the narrative and his role in shaping the world of Persona 5. So don't hate Morgana just because he constantly calls Ryuji dumb or stupid. It's just, firstly, that's just the normal banter that Persona 3 until 5 had. With Junpei and Yukari, Yosuke and Chie, it's just normal. Even Futaba and Yusuke had this kind of banter. But anyways, that is all. I'll see ya.